Hello there. It's been a while, but since I've been testing you more frequently on how to not be stupid on social media, I thought, why not test myself and make sure that I, as an Afro-American individual in the year 2024, am not smothered in all types of bigotry due to white supremacy? Because yes, I know I have the fabled white privilege card that gets me out of any drastic situation, but I need you all to understand, as a content creator who has made videos criticizing the antics of select individuals who just so happen to be black, I often get a few people coming towards me and saying, how could you say this about your own people? How could you say this about another black person? Wow, I guess skinfolk really are kinfolk. And my response to those individuals used to be to get very angry, but now it's just to put these images on the screen and ask these for the people, individuals, would you defend this shit if it happened next door to you or to your family member? Fuck, if I come do any of these things to anyone that you just so happen to know or to you, are you going to want me in jail, dead, or are you going to grab me by the hand and say, my black brother, let me heal you via the powers of Dr. Umar? But all that aside, I think it's time to test myself. And what better way to do it than by the voice and instruction and the knowledge from a white guy?
Racism is not a choice. You were not taught to be racist. You, fellow white person, like everybody else, were born into a world that you did not create. Everything you inherited, whether biologically or socially, was not your choice. And that's the same thing with racism. We were born into a racial caste system in which white-bodied individuals are the oppressor class. Whether you wanted that designation or not, that's the system that you and I were born into. We had no choice in the matter. However, once you become aware of how things are, once you've become educated about your role in how things are, then you have a choice. Do you want to stand firm and uphold the system you've inherited, fighting with anyone and everyone that brings up privilege, equity, justice, racial oppression? Or do you want things to change? More often than not, those of us that are white are so preoccupied with trying to separate ourselves from the group to justify and set ourselves apart as the good or safe white person. But when you live in a racial caste system, there's no such thing. We're all complicit in upholding the system until we start pushing against it and fight to dismantle it like our lives depend on it, because they do.
Two things. Number one, racism is most definitely a choice. And I don't understand how you can in one breath say that it's not, but then say you have the choice once you educate yourself on all these different things. It's more so based on what you see around you at any given point in the day. If your parents are just so happen to be whiter than this AirPod case and they do the bump and grind and they create you, they have two options while you're growing up. Teach you that there are many different people out there in this world who have many different experiences than us. And you should respect the fact that your way of life isn't the only way of life that exists around here. Little Susie, little Jimmy, little Timmy, little Rebecca. I'm thinking of the worst TV sitcom white names. Or they could have you and teach you that, hey, we are the hierarchy of society and everyone else who has different shades from us, they're the lower class and you should treat them as such. And while you go to school, you'll learn something. And while you go outside in public and mingle with people, you'll learn another thing. It'll be all these convoluted things that will teach you how to interact with the general public. You will either be a nice, respectable human being or a piece of shit. Number two, I always love when it's worded like the white people have this access key to all this success, as if I've never seen white people struggle in the trailer park. I haven't seen white people on food stamps. I don't see white people who are homeless. I don't see white people on crack. Yeah, if you got whiteness in you, you just got that automatic key card to be at the top of the echelon instead of, just being a regular motherfucker who got dealt the dead man's hand if you just so happen to be in that scenario. Because yes, there are rich white people, but also for the people in the back who clearly don't understand this, there are poor white people.
You wrote, so if someone that isn't white hates on a white person based on their skin color, what do you call that? You're not going to like my answer. I call it justifiable.
Is this justifiable, white man?
Has looked into these allegations and says it has taken action. Still, parent Kyla Posey says she can't believe a principal thought separating students according to race was a good idea.
We've lost sleep trying to figure out, why would a person do this?
Kyla Posey says she was stunned when she learned about classes segregated by race at Mary Lynn Elementary last year. A practice she says was put in place and condoned by Principal Sharon Briscoe. Principal Sharon Briscoe. Principal Sharon Briscoe. Principal Sharon Briscoe.
White-bodied people have conquered and colonized almost this entire planet. As a history teacher, I teach my students about the scramble for Africa, in which all of these European countries came together to decide which parts of Africa they were going to colonize. And then about the age of exploration, in which Europeans sailed over to the Western Hemisphere and committed genocide against any and every indigenous population they came across. And then I teach about the transatlantic slave trade, and then slavery, and then Jim Crow, and then the war on drugs, and then mass incarceration, and then about people that deny the experience of Black, Brown, Indigenous, and other people of color to this day. So you ask me, would I call a person that hates on a white person because they're white? I call them a reasonable human being who's just making decisions based on reason and experience.
I know in a vacuum, a lot of people say these things and they think to themselves, it's just fighting back, or it's justice, or it's the consequences of a history that has not been fair to a certain demographic of people. But understand, you are not going to combat racism by just being an intolerable piece of shit, or, if you don't like that word, a racist to people who have no understanding or no in-depth thought of what it is you're so mad at. And when you explain it, and it's the 400 years thing, all I'm thinking in my mind is, you were alive for that long? No? Then what the fuck are you mad at? You cannot sit here and claim that a bunch of hatred that falls upon you is justifiable when you know deep inside, if you had a bunch of motherfuckers at your doorstep throwing shit at you, spray painting your fucking house with a bunch of slurs, burning crosses on your front lawn, you would not stand outside and say, yeah, black people, get your justice on the white guy. You would be like, 911, I got a fucking problem.
You wrote, I don't agree. Hating anyone because of what someone did to you or your ancestors is ridiculous and keeps the hatred, segregation, racism going indefinitely. You do know that the people that have experienced hatred, segregation, and racism are not the ones that are keeping those things alive, right?
She goes by the name Hero, and she has a lot of work to do to get this Bucktown gallery space ready to host her art exhibit this weekend. That exhibit has garnered much more attention than originally expected since the 23-year-old artist distributed these flyers around the city for the show called White Only, with a drawing of a noose.
Racism is alive and prevalent today as much as we want to act like it doesn't exist.
And you live it every day.
I live it every single day.
Some critics have complained the flyers suggest they come from white supremacists or some other hate group.
I believe that people should understand what a noose on anything will represent. And, you know, it represents the blood of my ancestors.
The signs contain little information, but offer a QR code which links to the show's website. There, the artist offers some explanation of her philosophy.
I can't draw a picture of a flower without it representing all of my ancestors being deflowered.
Even if they respond to the people that are doing those things with hatred. An essential part of keeping oppressive systems alive is having the power to do so. Ultimately, people aren't responding to segregation and racism with hatred. They're simply doing what they need to do to survive. And sometimes, survival means staying away from us.
Congratulations. You are a part of a white society that I like to call the all fours whites. The type of people who just get on all fours and just take it from the back, because you want me to understand that racism is not a choice. But as soon as you learn all the intricacies of the world, you somehow have the choice to either continue it or to stop it, which is something you never do. People responding to all this hatefulness with more hate are somehow justifiable. And you also want me to understand that these same people at the same time are reasonable individuals who really don't have the power, and the only way you can have that power is if you're white, and you're the only people who could do such a thing, when, if you've been on this channel for at least, I would argue, 4 months, you would know that's not the case at all. And anybody with a little bit of power has the ability to do some segregating ass shit because they somehow want to create a safe space for themselves, which in any other avenue of the fucking spectrum would be viewed as segregation. But that's besides the point. I don't understand how individuals want to attempt to talk to a bunch of people about a specific subject, but seemingly always talk over them. It is embarrassing that this many white individuals seemingly think that they are going to be the mascots for all this change, when I just look at you and say, wow, you're a fucking moron because you're not doing anything but preaching about a bunch of shit black people have talked about, and they have somehow done it better than you, and you're the one that's supposed to have all the mythical power to change the world, yet you don't. So it would stand to reason for everybody to walk away from this video with just a couple things. Number one, you are absolutely able to be taught how to treat individuals, whether it be in school or whether it be from life experience. Two, responding to hate with more hate does not make you justifiable, and oftentimes makes you look like a hypocritical bastard. You are not a reasonable individual looking at history and saying that history has a lot of bad things, and you decide to repeat those damn things because some white guy viewed you as a responsible or decent human being who is respectable. And number four, and I believe this is the most important part, Leon passed the test. He does not have all of this bigotry deep inside. I know years ago I had a white man looming outside of my asshole, but I have conquered my fears. I have beaten the odds, and once again I have passed the test. And I truly believe deep inside, white privilege is something I will always secretly have. Not because I was born with it, but because I was taught skin pigmentation. Subscribe to the channel. I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.